Hello, my beautiful Heracumen viewers. Today we are going to start our first video, and I wanted to invite you to it because I think it's very, very important. It's definitely very close to my heart. And I wanted to welcome our beautiful author, Gia Dhanoa, who wrote this amazing book. It's a book filled with poetry, a book filled with feelings, emotions. And she's dealing here with this awful, horrible, and terrible topic, which is abuse. She's talking through her heart, and with her heart, she's giving her a piece of herself in this book. She's also sharing poems from other people, experiences from other people. And today, that is going to be our topic. I know we often hear a lot about people who go through abuse, who are in the middle of the process, but there is not much information about people who finished with it, who are done, who got out of it. And what now? What next? How do we live later? How do we progress with our life? And how do we trust that this kind of abuse or any other kind of abuse is never going to happen again? So thank you so much, Gia, to actually be able to give us this time and your experience and your love, and share with us all those little wisdoms that you have and you put into your book. So could I ask you to just tell us roughly why have you decided to write it?
Thank you, Hannah. That was a fabulous intro. It's amazing when someone gets what your book's about. And I think, to be honest, the title itself, so deliberately did it like the FFS. So it stands for Forgiven, Forgotten, So. And it's exactly what we're talking about today. It's the so. It's like, so what happens? You know, you've moved on, you've forgiven the person, you're cracking on with your life. And this is what, so the book is a collation of the poems of a journey through a man or a woman's journey with abuse. And then it was almost like, right, you've dealt with it, you've read it, you've expressed it, and now it's almost like, let's move on. So the book was actually, let's get some realization in some people's life, what kind of relationship they're really in. And then at the back of my book, I've asked people to share their stories. You know, how did this book encourage them to take that first step to remove themselves from an abusive relationship? So it's, as you said, it's me sharing myself, me sharing through my poetry in third person, other people's experiences as well. And it's about, you know, raising awareness. I think that's the biggest thing. You know, we talk about abuse a lot. You know, you get snippets of it in the news, but then really, does anything really happen of it afterwards? So so the book itself is a starting platform for me to raise awareness. So that was a beginning chapter, and then it's about supporting people through coming out of it, and, you know, understanding firsthand, and like you said, you know, personal subject matter for yourself as well, understanding firsthand what people are going through. You know, it's so different talking to someone that's actually been through it, as opposed to someone sitting opposite to you trying to counsel you, or trying to, you know, without actually having the actual emotions that you personally may have gone through. So yes, that is the book in a nutshell.
Okay, brilliant. When I was reading it, to be honest, I almost cried because it was so personal to me. So every person who went through some form of abuse, and it doesn't have to be a domestic violence or any kind of physical abuse. It can be emotional. It can be, it can come from your friend or from someone you work with, from your closest family member. So people don't realize what abuse actually is. And they think that, for example, if a parent is telling to the child, don't be stupid, sit straight, behave, they don't consider that an abuse, isn't it? But this is also a form of abuse, because that kind of talk that we received from our parents, from our friends, from the closest people that we trusted, it stays in our head. And that kind of talk the self-talk also in our head creates later on the platform for us to receive more of that, because that's something we understand and we know, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would totally agree with you. It's the lack of encouragement generally throughout your life, the lack of empowerment, feeling that you're not good enough. You're quite right. So a personal experience for me. So yes, I went through my long-term relationship with abuse, but then I hadn't dealt with it. So then I let another kind of similar situation happen, but that was more so emotional. But I personally think emotional abuse is probably more, you have to heal more from emotional abuse compared to the physical, because you can physically deal with it, you can see it healing, but the emotional abuse and the mental abuse is what you've got to continue to work with and overcome. So yes, I totally agree with you that there's so many different forms of abuse. And again, it comes to the awareness and the lack of awareness. If parents or friends knew what they were saying was going to have that impact on you, would they really do it? And I actually don't think they would. I think it's almost like you've become conditioned to think certain behaviors, certain language is acceptable. But this is where I think we as individuals should feel empowered to speak up when we feel uncomfortable about something. You know, sadly, it can't be so evident with a child. So, you know, there comes a time where the child becomes stronger to realize that they can, you know, confidently share with their parent how they feel. But when you see a poor young child going through it at a much younger age, it breaks my heart, absolutely breaks my heart. I almost wish I could go and tell that parent or father off, like, what are you doing? You know, it's really, really not good.
I think that's it's something, it's really, really powerful. When I actually called a domestic violence helpline, I didn't understand why am I calling, because it's the person who is going through abuse, that is the person who doesn't realize that they are going through that kind of abuse. And I think what it was shocking, and it was at the same time, it was I felt ashamed, even though I wasn't the person who was doing it, but I felt ashamed. So quite often the victim is feeling this is my fault because I allowed it to happen. And in one of your poems, in the one about forgiveness, if you have a look in your book on the page number 64, if you could read it for me, that would be great. Then we can get closer to the book and to understanding the topic.
Yep, so it's a quote from myself, and I have written, I openly forgive you and forget you to ensure I live my life to the fullest, whilst you figure out what happened.
Exactly. So do you think, is it possible to forgive not only that person, but I think the most difficult, it is to forgive yourself?
Absolutely, yes. So I think forgiveness towards the person that you may have received abuse from is so important. You know, you can't move on as a person if you're not forgiving. And I think forgiveness is always the first step, and then forgetting about it and giving yourself permission to move on is like the second stage almost. And then in regards to yourself, now that's an interesting one. Absolutely, that normally takes work. So I totally agreed with yourself when you said about, you know, so for 5 years I suffered through domestic and mental abuse without talking to anyone about it. So for 5 years it was the embarrassment and the lack of acknowledging I was actually a victim of what I was going through. So I totally understand the embarrassment, not wanting to talk about it. And when I looked at myself, I thought, really, I'm not going through this, am I really? Like, you know, you kind of think to yourself, no, I've been raised better than this. I know that I would never stand for this. And then I think as a victim or someone's experiencing it, you then start making excuses for the other person. So my biggest excuse for the ex was in regards to mental health. So he had a mental health issue. So I was like, oh no, you know, there's an underlying factor, but really there is no excuse for any type of behavior. So you know, you kind of need to take yourself away from that. And then the last part of the quote, you know, whilst you figure out what happened, and you know, talking about my personal situation, maybe they will never figure out what happened. You know, maybe they will always think everything was just fine. So but the thing is, there comes a point, I think, where the journey of forgive and forget allows you to no longer care about the other person, because you owe it to yourself, the self-love, to continue with your journey of life. So I think yeah, I don't think you should definitely just work on that forgiveness and forget. There's no point carrying tension, and that's the way I reflected upon it myself. Don't carry that tension through again and again into life. So it was a matter of like dealing with it and leave it alone now.
I also think that you say you don't care. I don't think we don't care, because we had that person in our life for a long time, and if we are staying with that person, or if we are trying to change that person, that means we are trying to control it.
Yes.
We're enabling the behavior, because if we stay, we say we accept it, we take it, we are agreeing with it. The minute we get out of this relationship and we say no, that's it, that is the time when we actually giving that person space to realize what they are doing is wrong. Because we are saying, no, we are done with it, thank you very much, I'm not taking part, I don't need it anymore. Because sometimes, surprisingly, we feel that we need it, because we feel like we need to change that person. We are trying to be, we don't want to see ourselves as victims, we are trying to see ourselves as heroes.
Yeah.
So I am going to take it because I know they are better than this. They are going to change. They are going to transfer because I will help them. But if they don't want to do it themselves, we are not a hero. We are actually a victim. But it's easier to put up with that kind of behavior if we think we are helping them to get better.
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, I agree with you. It's called like being the fixer. You know, you think you can fix someone, but at what cost? And I think those were kind of the reflections that I was having. And you know, there's another poem I mentioned in my book called The Yo-Yo Effect. And you know, I think many victims do this. You have the strength, you leave for a couple of days, and then you come back. You know, and then you constantly keep doing this, and like you're saying, you're accommodating the behavior, you know, and that's what ends up happening until you really get quite a wake-up call. And some people sadly get such a serious wake-up call that they don't come back from it. So, you know, it was almost recognizing that within my relationship, that this could be me. I could become a statistic. I could become just a number of someone who was a victim of domestic violence. So it was a matter of removing myself from that situation. So
yeah, definitely. And there is another poem which actually relates to what we just talked about beautifully. It's on page number 15, and it's called Take It. Absolutely love it. What I also wanted to say before you start reading it, I just wanted to show, I don't know if it's visible, because your poems are not only to be read, but to be looked at. I think that the way you designed them, the way you designed the letters, the fonts, and the spaces between them is such a masterfully done. It's so beautiful, really, because you created an art not only that you can read and reflect on, but you can also look at it and play with words, and that is amazing. So I wanted to congratulate you on that, because that is beautiful. It's this extra in-depth, extra depth, extra level that you gave to the reader. So if you could read it for us.
Yes, of course. Take it. I see now that you can't take it. When I am ready, I will be taking none of it.
Exactly. So that's when it needs to stop sometime, isn't it? It needs to stop. At some point you realize that you cannot take it anymore. You cannot take part in it anymore. Sometimes it's not your decision. Sometimes the decision has been made for you.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you just don't have anything left to make that decision because you're dead or too broken.
Yeah.
But I hope that most of the people who are listening to it and who are in that situation, they will feel somehow inspired by this chat, that we are having, and they will say to themselves, I am worthy of different life. I don't need to be a hero. I don't need to be a superwoman. I don't need to be anything more than I am. I am enough. And I think when you start realizing that you can have a different life, you deserve to have a different life, then that's when this decision is made. When you
Absolutely.
have, sometimes you don't even have strength to leave the relationship, but you still do it. You just like, you're so done. When you say about this yo-yo effect, this string that is connecting your finger with this yo-yo is just so thin, because it's been coming back and forward so many times. It's so thin, it breaks at some point, or it's so far that you can distance yourselves from it finally, and you can make this healthy decision to leave. And you don't take any more responsibility for what happens to the other person, because when we need to realize that other people are not our responsibility.
Totally agree. So my turning point was a dear friend of mine. I must have been having a bad day or something at work, and he said to me, G, if you can see yourself, and that poem's in the book as well, Turning Point, he said, G, if you can see yourself, you know, look at yourself in the mirror, how do you see your life panning out at 50? And, you know, I just didn't see myself living up until 50. And that was my turning point. I was like, okay, this does not seem like I'm going to survive. So there was my answer. You know, it took someone, and this particular friend, he's doesn't like being in people's personal business. So the fact that it came from him meant so much more, because he could see something was happening, and he kind of, you know, took me away to have a private conversation. And I thought, yeah, that meant a lot. And, you know, the fact that kept it away from my mum, kept it away from my sister, my dear friends I'd call dear, all because I guess I was trying to hope. You know, there's times to have hope, and there's times to just really be realistic with the situation that you're in. And an interesting thing you said was in regards to sometimes you have no choice. So my particular incident, which was over 6 years ago, was at my flat. I was had a 4-month-old baby with the ex-partner. I was feeding her a nighttime feed, and I could just see an episode of violence coming. I could just feel it. I could sense it. I could see the aggression coming. And usually the eyes don't lie. You know, you can always see it in the eyes. So I was like, okay, this is something's happening here. Something, you know, G, you know this well enough that something. And so that was the first ever and last episode of violence with my daughter. I was not going to stand for it. So when you say about choice, the choice I had made, I love this little girl much more than I love what I am, you know, this relationship, which has now become toxic and dangerous as such. So yes, I I remember texting my brother under the duvet. So this is how much control there was. I couldn't even freely text in front of the ex-partner. So I text under the duvet. All I text was my address. And I said to my brother, call the police now, I need them now. And luckily they came at the right time, and I've never seen that person since. But that I guess that I would say was more, you know, it was a survival technique. It was, you know, if you want to live, you need to remove this person out of your situation. So and that's what was done, and that was the decision that I made. So and the best decision too, I have to say, the best decision for me to really take some time out and reflect after that. You know, what was it that G needed? What was that G needed to do to be a provider for her gorgeous little daughter as well? So I think I was lucky in a sense that I had a beautiful little girl as my driving force. So, you know, that was almost like the kick I needed to kind of walk away from something that was unhealthy. But equally, if you don't have a child, it doesn't mean you should stay. You know, some people actually stay for the opposite reasons. Some people stay because they have children. Mine was totally the opposite reason, is that absolutely not. You know, I want harmony in my life. I want to raise her in a peace, calm, you know, grateful environment. And that force of violent energy was absolutely rocking the boat. So it had to go. So
Definitely. And also it's also really it's not good at that particular when you are in the middle of the situation, but I think you need to ask yourself a question: do you want your children to feel like you?
exactly.
Because imagine if you are feeling helpless, your children are feeling 20 times more helpless than you are, because they love you and they want to help you, but they cannot because they are tiny, they are vulnerable, and it's your job to protect them.
Absolutely.
So if you have to, if you want to be brave and if you want to be hero and be brave for them.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
And there is another poem of you which I really would like you to read, and it's called Your Stories, page 78. Could you read it for me, please?
Yes, of course. So, your story. I heard your story. I couldn't believe it to be true. It remained at the back of my mind, unknown to me. I would become you, feel your pain firsthand, beg for my life as you did. I became you, the main character in your story. So that is a true story. That is from me. And it was crazy. It was so someone told me this story, and their situation was similar to mine. You know, they fell for someone in the Caribbean. They went to live in the Caribbean as well, as did I. Um, and um, and that lady came back home in a coma. She came back in a coma, and that's how she came back to the UK. And a friend of mine was her friend, and I think she met this lady at a different part of her journey. So, you know, she obviously shared that story with her. Um, and I remember from the first strike that I received, not knowing if it was the first and last, which obviously it wasn't the last. And her story always came, because I think I heard that story just before, as I was moving to the Caribbean. So it was almost like call it like a gentle warning almost, or like a preview of what may have to come, which is an interesting thing to call it, really. But the fact that that story was told to me, obviously it meant something. And maybe there were even early on signs of things that I was refusing to acknowledge at the beginning, because and there's another story in the a poem, I should call it, about a slug, a snail. So that was me packing up everything, going there, only to be squashed or crushed. You know, it was it's yeah. So that lady story absolutely stayed in my heart, and I didn't know I would be writing something about her. You know, and how I came so close to um, being her. And I just have to give thanks that luckily I haven't ended up in a coma, but could have. So yeah, I am very, very grateful. So there's something that I joke to myself, but it's not a joke. But in 2014, I call it, I used 2 of my 9 cat lives. So, you know, they say cats have 9 lives. So the first obviously was to get rid of, flee myself from a situation. But I would share with you that from that situation, here comes the yo-yo. So I was in a situation where I knew I had to beg for my life to be alive, to come back to the UK. Then I came back to the UK, and then I realised I was expecting. So I was like, I've always wanted to be a mummy. So I can do this. So I had a conversation with myself. Can you be a single parent? Yes, I can. I know I can do it. But sillily, I thought the other person, the ex, could also support to raise, because it takes 2 to, you know, go work and have childcare and support. On reflection, I'm like, what the hell were you thinking, G? But I did. That was my thought process at that point in time. So he came across to the UK, only lasted 1 week, until that episode that I told you about me getting the police. So he only lasted 1 week. So they're really, and I have to confess, when I went to pick him up at the airport, I knew I made a mistake. Literally, I could feel it straight away. This is a mistake. But try to have conversation, try to move on with it. But yes, within a week I realized, and probably sooner, that this was not going to work. But as people say in life, sometimes you've just got to satisfy the what if. A very costly what if for me, but we satisfy the what if, you know. So I don't need to look back and say to myself, you know, what if it could have worked in the UK and so forth. I very much knew it couldn't work in the UK, and it wasn't working in the Caribbean either. So yeah.
I think that it's very interesting that how we often know what is bad for us. We know, we have this inkling, we have this gut feeling, some people call it intuition, and we know, we deep down, we really know, but we decide, no, I'm going to just like, it's not important, because your ego is talking through you, and your ego is telling you, you're not good enough. This is more than you deserve. This situation is going to be, so the minute you start wanting something more, too much, maybe too much, and you putting all the work in and all the effort in, that means it's just one way.
Yes.
You're going to be used, whether that is in business, whether that is in relationship, any kind of relationship, any kind of connection. When you give too much, it's not the problem that that person takes it. The problem is, why do you feel the need to give so much? Why do you have this need to be this superstar? Because you want to save people, you want to give them so much love, support, and care. You want to show them how you are better. You want to show them that you are this superior, amazing person who is going to take care of them, and who is going to show them different work, and who is going, as you said, to fix them. And at that particular point, when we are doing it, we don't understand it that way. We just have this feeling of giving. We are overgiver. But overgiver it's something bad, because you are giving too much, and that person may not need it. But that person may be overtaker. So if they take too much from you and you are giving too much, then it's a perfect relationship for that particular situation. It's not good for anybody. It's not good for that person who takes because they are abusive. It's not good for the person who gives too much, because they are victim. But this is the relationship we create when our ego, or whatever you call that, your patterns from the past that you've been taught, are telling you, this is what I need to feel safe. And you go into that relationship when you are beaten, abused, humiliated, disappointed, because this is what you know, understand. So you feel safe. If you know something, you feel safe. What you don't feel safe when you don't know the situation, when the situation is not familiar. So then after the abusive situation, you go into a healthy relationship with someone and you don't trust them, even though they never given you any reason. But you don't trust them because your past patterns were telling you that every single person that is coming to your life is a bastard, isn't it?
So I think, I think exactly what you said. So I think one thing, once you come out of an abusive relationship, you must take time for yourself. I've absolutely been guilty myself, that jump into things and you realize they're not right for you, or they're not the right time for that particular type of relationship. The other thing I think I definitely learned, and moving forward from abuse, and I'm still learning right now, so is taking ownership. Take ownership. Equally, who's the common factor here through the relationships that you're not feeling are healthy or are toxic? It's myself. So what do I need to work on in regards to creating healthy boundaries, learning to love myself, taking baby steps for trust as well. And I think the most important thing is, what can I do to just glow? What can I do to just be me? And I have to say, so there is someone that actually recommended, and I did some healing with Awaken With Me, a lovely lady called Christina Patel. She put on a session for people who've been through abuse, and like we said, a very colourful range of abuse. And then she reined it into regards to, what do everybody that's experienced abuse need to learn, such as the healthy boundaries, such as empowerment, such as learning to love yourself. And I'm very open to that, even where I think sometimes I'm fine, but I learned so much from that journey by going through theta healing with her. It was a fabulous journey. And, you know, I think you've got to invest in yourself. When you've come out of abuse, you've got to invest in yourself with the tools that match your type of healing. So there's no correct type of healing for one person. And, you know, I would never want someone to dictate a certain way, because, you know, me writing this book is a part of healing as well. It's a part of me closing chapters, and then I'm opening them for other people. You know, I want to like raise, you know, people to start questioning if they feel uncomfortable in certain things. I've had people read this book and they've said to me, gee, we read it once and we had to read it straight again, you know, because they wanted to digest it again. Others have said to me they found it really difficult to read because they knew me, and they were like, you know, goodness me, that we didn't know about this. But this is where, you know, 5 years of silence was more than long enough. You know, going through it silently and not telling anyone. And I don't want someone to do what I did, you know, forget the embarrassment, forget the, you know. And there's another thing that really happens in abuse is the slowly killing your self-esteem. So that is what has taken me a while to rebuild back, you know, that esteem, that kind of confidence of feeling good in your skin. Because like you said, even, you know, it doesn't have to be from a partner, it could be from a parent. We're slowly deflating someone, and that really kind of kills someone inside, and that absolutely changes someone to who they are. So it's quite interesting when I think of who I was when I was 19, when I met the ex, to who I then became at 29. Two very different people. I was a confident young lady, I was joy, I was, you know, laughing, and just myself. And then by the time I was left 29, it was almost like, who the hell am I? You know, who have I become in this journey, like you said, of giving too much? You know, you don't have to be in an amazing relationship by giving your all. You know, that's one thing that I've learned through time. You can absolutely be in a healthy relationship by keeping some of yourself to yourself and equally the person can do the same. So now going forward, I look forward to a relationship that that's balanced, you know, that gives me the time to work on what I need to work on, and gives the person time to work on what they're working on. So because one thing that I did do when after my abuse, I absolutely went and started focusing on myself. So I no longer needed to keep carrying this, you know, extra weight of trying to fix somebody. So it was like, right, gee, what do you want to do? So I then enrolled myself, my baby's a baby, I then enrolled myself on to do a degree in construction. So that's what I thought was, you know, it was fabulous. It was hard at times, you know, having a crying baby and then try to get an assignment in. It was great. I really, but I think one thing you definitely need after abuse is a plan. You need a plan of what you want to succeed in, what you want to do next, because it's that when you have that clear direction of what you want to achieve next, will keep you going. Because easily what can happen without a plan, here comes the yo-yo again, you know, you can go slowly go back. You're having a great week or two, and then kicks in the dependency or the routine that you're used to, and you could equally just go back to the person that you shouldn't be with. And one thing I did do, because obviously, you know, having Ivor, she was like 4 months old at that time, I just didn't stop. So I didn't stop because I knew for me personally that was the right thing to do. So if I sat down and moped, or if I did, and it was quite funny, I laughed to myself, I was like, this is the least tears I've ever cried in this relationship, you know. Maybe this was coming, you know, but this is where I felt it was absolutely the right time. It was the right time to walk away from something that was just not serving me any purpose anymore, was causing me more grief. And I'm absolutely chuffed with the way life's turning out at the moment. I have to really appreciate, you know, the flow of abundance that is coming my way, just for being open towards opportunities. And Hannah, you've been a sweetie pie, giving me, you know, amples of opportunities, connecting me with people. I'm currently talking with someone this year. I want to help them build a refuge. So, you know, being in property with my sister now, you know, me and my sister always said property was going to be an enabler to help people in domestic situations. So we both have, me and my sister both come at different angles at it, but at the end of the day, the property is that safeguard, that protection, that shelter that can give someone that kind of space to breathe and, you know, really think what they need to do and almost stop that going back to that situation. Because a lot of us, you know, I know firsthand, many ladies in particular, you know, they panic about the future, they panic about the steps without, because if the abuser is the provider as such, then, you know, they're like, oh, but in order for me to have this lifestyle or have this kind of life, you know, I need to stick with this person. But my question and a challenge to them back would be, and what if you don't have life? You know, so what to the lifestyle, or so what to what they are providing you? You've got to love yourself more, got to love yourself, you know, you've got to love yourself first before you can even offer yourself to someone. And then when you look deep down, you'll realize that that love may have been disconnected, in the sense that, you know, that's where you start holding on to things that aren't really necessary. So yeah, Hannah, I really hope we can inspire some ladies, gentlemen, you know, to really kind of reflect, because it's a long process. It doesn't just happen overnight. You know, it wouldn't be happen that today I'm going to leave my abusive partner. It just doesn't happen like that. But at the back of your head, if you start slowly thinking, you know, just like that story did for me, I heard a story, then I became the person looking in the mirror to this story, and then you kind of start connecting the dots of why things have come into your life at certain points.
Yeah, it's great. Exactly what you're saying. That and that was also the reason why I created Heracumen. It was for women who are feeling, okay, I left this relationship, or I am in the process of leaving this relationship. I need money. I need support myself and my children, for example, or just myself. And what's next? Because when you are in such a relationship, then you stop existing. You don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Your needs don't exist anymore. Your feelings don't exist, because that other person took it all from you, and you don't know who you are. You are just blank page, just damaged one, like you know, a piece of paper when you just make a bow out of it, and then you just spread it, and you can see just creases, yeah, and it's just. And you don't know, you have to iron it, you have to make it smooth, and you need to create something beautiful out of it, and you are at the point when you have absolutely nothing. And I wanted to create this Heracumen website for women to just get them to where I am at this particular moment. And it took me I think around seven years to get there, because I knew I can do it, but I didn't know how to. And I had the skills, but I didn't have courage. And I felt like I am nobody, because I've been told that without me, you are nothing on numerous occasions. Without me, you are nothing. I heard it so many times. Sorry, you cannot manage without me. And then you start believing it, because you got yourself to the point when you don't even leave the house. You just sit there depressed. You don't know what you're doing. You have no job, you have no income, you have nowhere to go, you have no family quite often, because you don't talk with anybody, because they try to rescue you, and you just decided that no,
at that time.
I don't want to be. So they got fed up. Your friends got fed up with your moaning, your crying, your complaining, but not doing anything about it. So you are completely alone, and you need to make that decision. And this is the best time. This is the best time to get on and do it. And then the minute you do that, you will see so many people coming into your life and trying to help you, but you need to be ready to receive that help.
Absolutely.
And it's tiny steps. So I wanted to create, and one of the reasons why I invited you for this first interview was because to show that we can do it. We went through it,
yeah,
and we are thriving in our lives, and it is possible to be visible, to be heard, to be listened to be respected. It's possible for us to stick to our boundaries
absolutely.
and to overcome the fear. At some point, you just don't live by the fear anymore. You just
Yeah,
don't understand what fear is anymore, because you're just enjoying your life.
absolutely. Yeah,
And
I
it's,
totally
isn't
get
it?
that.
You just
Yeah,
enjoy it. You just wake up in the morning and you think, yes, I'm going to smash it because I
yeah,
can, because I've
absolutely.
done it in the past so many times, and because it's awesome, it's amazing. And because I went through
Mm-hmm.
that story built me up. And that's nothing to be ashamed of, disappointed. This is just a story that is told in the past. It's
Yeah,
not happening anymore. So just
no,
make it your past. Don't make it your present moment. Don't make it your future. Just make it your past and move on. And it
absolutely.
takes lots of therapy, lots of reading, lots of support, encouragement from other people. It is possible, because you are not that kind of person who will be living that life, who is destined to live that life.
No,
No one,
exactly.
no one is destined to live that
No,
life. This is a choice.
exactly. And I think that is a very key word that you said. It is a choice. And also want, fellow ladies and gentlemen to know that, like I was saying, I didn't stop. And, it's great that you mentioned a 7-year duration. I'd say I'm living at my peak 6 years later after my duration. So it does take time. So if anybody thinks that they're going to magically receive, that things are going to get better straight away, they're not. And the reason why they're not going to get better straight away is because it depends how much you're putting into yourself. How much self-love are you putting into yourself? How much self-development are you giving your brain to realize, that the power actually lives within inside you. If you had an idea about something, go for it. Go and start going for those kind of those challenges, those opportunities that you put on the back burner. And that's an interesting thing when you're in a relationship that's so time consuming, or really takes so much out of you. You really forget about your own ambitions, you forget about your passions and loves. And I think that's one of the greatest things that you can kind of get from being out of that relationship, is to reconnect back with yourself. And one thing also is to forgive yourself, like I did, in the sense that you may naturally go into an unhealthy relationship after your past relationship, but all that is showing you is that you need to continue to work on yourself, that you're not quite ready, or you're not quite there, or you've not quite tweaked your healthy boundaries. And and I think writing, expressing, journaling, all great ways of the healing process, and even what your brain's thinking. I have something called an express book. I don't even need it anymore, but when you need to, I used to, because I don't really swear, because especially with I don't think my daughter knows any swear words. Bless her, she thinks shut up is a swear word. Oh, mummy, somebody said a bad word. And I'm like, oh yes, darling, someone said a bad word. So the express book is where I used to say whatever I want if I had a bad day, but it's good to get it out of you, because I think when you're in not a very healthy relationship, you're stocking everything up internally. So internally things are building and building and building, and boom, you have one day where you feel courageous and you walk away, and then slowly you might go back again. But we need to constantly build that courageousness, and constantly have at the back of your mind the learnings that you're learning from that situation. You might have gone through one. So one thing I would say, so like I was saying, I call it the first strike, because that's exactly how I experienced it. It was a first strike. It was almost like a ninja strike that I received the first time that I received a physical abuse as such. And I thought to myself, is this it? Is this a one-off? Surely this won't happen again. And the person was so apologetic, and to the fact that I believed him. And it was like, no, give it another month or two. Something different happened again. So my learning from that was, it's never just once. Don't give someone the opportunity to make it the second, third, fourth, fifth time, until you'll then start thinking to yourself, am I even going to survive here? So I think absolutely just Yeah, I've lost my trail of thought, Hannah.
No, I totally understand. I think that we need to give people responsibility for their life. We need to trust them that they will be changing when they are ready.
Yes. Yeah.
And this is not, your job is not to change them, and your job is not to wait for them to change. This is important. You
Yeah.
don't wait, because everyone is going through their life in the way they are able and ready to live. So so if you think that person is not on your level, it's not living in the way that you wish them to live, you should leave them, because it's different way of life. It's not necessarily bad or good, it's just different. And if you're feeling this is not the life you want to have, you shouldn't be part of it. And it doesn't mean whether you have it doesn't matter whether you have children or you don't have children. This is your life. You have only one life. Your children are going to grow and they will be able to choose their own life, but your life, this is all you have. So you shouldn't be spending that life on fixing others, on helping them to destroy you in a process. So that is important to understand, because when you are in this giving situation, you often forget yourself, and you don't consider yourself priority, and you feel like it's bad if you put yourself at the top of the pyramid. If you are at the top, then you are egoist, you are selfish, you're a bad person. But it's not true. It's not true.
It's crazy, the things that we've been taught, you know. It's like it's crazy, because you could have two people on top of the pyramid, you know, a partner equally on top of the pyramid, and yourself, and balance out. You could balance out in different qualities and absolutely work. Because talking about, that's what I would be looking for in a partner. I'd be looking for someone that has ambition, that absolutely knows their stuff, and that is loving themselves as well and able to give love as well. I don't want someone, you know, in a depressive state or any of that. And that's what you've got to realize. We've got to learn to be our best selves. And again, it doesn't happen overnight, but you've got to feed the soul. You've got to feed it love, kindness, encouragement, in order to kind of get the output. So, you know, if you know you're the person walking deflated, or you're the person walking with your eyes on the road as opposed to actually looking up, you know, being confident and walking, kind of, you know, you know within yourself when you're hiding in yourself. And I think that is the most important thing to kind of get out of that, really, when you start going inwards. And then, like we said, you know, you forget who you are.
If you are ashamed of yourself in front of the other person, that means that person is not for you. That's it.
Agreed.
And if you feel ashamed for what you have done or what you are doing, the way you're behaving, you need to stop doing that. You need to change that. Stop being like that. So if you don't like yourself the way you are, work on that, and don't expect some other people to just accept it. Because why would they? Why would you accept that? If you feel bad after doing something, try not to do it again. Try harder if that's not enough. And then just stop. It's like with smoking, isn't it? You smoke, you know it's bad for you, but you decide this is my choice. I like it more than stopping it. So at some point in your life you decide, no, this is bad for me, I'm going to stop, and you stop. Sometimes gradually, sometimes abruptly, but you stop when you decide this is bad for me. So if someone is hitting you, is beating you up, or is abusing you mentally or emotionally or financially, they think it's all right. And that is the revelation, because you understand they accept that behavior, because the more you do it, the easier it becomes. So if someone has beaten you up first time, the second time is going to be much easier to do, especially if you accepted that, if you've forgiven that, if you are still with that person. That means you are accepting that behavior. And what we should accept is what is good for us, not what is bad for us.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this chat. It was beautiful. I really encourage everyone to either buy that book for themselves because it's really worth it, in-depth and beautiful emotional story written in poems, or if you know someone who could benefit from it, just buy them that for them because it's available on Amazon, and it's a really emotional story written in beautiful poetry. So thank you so much, G.
Thank you,
It was
Hannah.
beautiful to have you here, and it was such an empowering and inspirational talk, not only for women but for men too. And
Absolutely.
if you think about all what we've just been talking today, I know Heracumen is a business side, but think about it. If you approach your business and your relationship in an abusive way, and if you feel that you are surrounded by toxic people who only want to use you, maybe you are in a relationship, abusive relationship with your customers, with your business partners, because that abuse is, we are surrounded by it.
Mhm.
It's just whether we allow it to come to us and touch us and affect us. That's what you should focus on. Thank you so much,
Thank
and have a
you.
beautiful day.
You too,
Thank
Hannah.
you.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye.